So we are here in the windy city of Chicago at the Roots Americas conference, and I'm joined here by Jorge Roberts, who is CEO of Avport. So Jorge, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Holly.
So my first question for you is, how is business at your airports going?
Yeah, no, I think there's been a strong rebound of the pandemic. As you know, we have a combination of airports that all we're operating at large hubs, as well as regional airports and also corporate aviation airports. So they've all had different types of growth, and the rebound has been more in the corporate aviation, followed by domestic. We're starting to see international traffic pick up as well. So, and then in some places like New Haven, where we went from within a year from 0 flights to 14 destinations with Avelo, we started running out of car parking. So that just tells you the demand for the business. So.
Wow, that's fantastic news. Yeah. Is there any more room for Avelo to expand in that airport?
Well, that's the idea. Right now we're going through the environmental process, and the idea is to expand the runway and to build a new terminal within the next few years to allow for that growth and to serve the demand. It's an underserved market, so definitely providing kind of the infrastructure to serve that. So
that's really exciting.
Yeah.
So how has it been rebuilding your workforce after the pandemic? I know a lot of airports have suffered in that respect. How has it been for you?
Yeah, we were very fortunate. We were very proactive in how we responded, how we took care of our employees, and so we didn't have any people die. We also didn't have any people leave, and so we were able to kind of take care of that workforce, and people I think recognized that and appreciated that, and we've created a kind of pretty loyal workforce. So our hiring needs has been just on certain areas, more just on the lower skill kind of labor, like anybody else. But in the end of the day, we've made it work, and that's kind of what Avports brings. It's making it work regardless of the resources you have. So
yeah, and picking up on that kind of low skill, but how are you implementing technology then to automate and digitize processes, with these low value tasks which allow your employees to focus on higher value interactions maybe with passengers?
Right. Yeah, I think the benefit is we're in the age of technology and innovation, right? And in terms of using that technology that's more accessible, like you said, to automate those processes. So creating places that can be repeated tasks, more digitalization of, for example, reports and certifications, and making sure that we're keeping compliance. So one of the things that we had is different databases, and so one of the things is consolidating that database and putting together just a front dashboard that it's accessible to everybody. And there's that operational transparency, but as well as we can be proactive and or also react in more real time versus waiting until you find out when it's too late to do something about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, the next generation, they're very interested in technology. So how are you working to attract this next generation of airport leaders?
Yeah, no, I think it's again, you go back to the basics, right? It's creating trust in your employees and creating this management that is authentic, transparent, and ethical as well. And I think people are just want to know that you just maybe sometimes don't have the right information or the information that they want to hear, or to sugarcoat it like we've done in the past. So it's been very focused on transparency, but also on creating an optimal workplace that is flexible, and that they have those tools at their disposal to do better their job. And so I think we've been able to do that, and our history tells us that our average tenure of our employees is 15, 20 years, and I think people, when they come in, they recognize it, say, well, people have been here for a long, I'm going to give it a chance. There's a reason why people want to work here, and so I think we've been very fortunate within, given the challenges that exist today. So.
You're at the last year's Passenger Terminal Expo. Your Chief Operations Officer, Arturo Garcia, he had a robot dog with him.
That's right.
So how's that going with that robot dog? Are you still using that in your airports?
Yeah, it's been more of a, to be honest, it's been kind of still very development of artificial intelligence and using kind of, like you said, the new innovation tools to apply to areas that potentially could benefit. So for example, the dog was idea to kind of help reduce the stress already, and a lot of the whole room sometimes because of the excess demand and sometimes delays or issues that happen with aviation, you're able to kind of create kind of a more friendly or approachable environment, and that's part of that. And what we did is we first test things, and so as we think about it and also cooperating with the dogs, the manufacturer, to see if we can kind of continue to take it to the next level. But there's a lot of exciting innovation like that is coming down the pipeline, and so for us, it's more just thinking, okay, we need to be part of the conversation, iterate until we get it to a place where it's really kind of fully functional. So.
Can you tell us about any of these other innovations that are in the pipeline?
Yeah, I think we're very focused on more energy solutions because that's really the issue. There's a lot of demand for electrification of the ground service equipment, but also on the car parking and these areas where it's not just putting EV electrical for stations charging, but also focusing on what's the next generation of sustainability, such as hydrogen-powered vehicles. So at New Haven, we've already applied for a permit to bring in, we'll be the first airport in the U.S. to bring hydrogen-powered vehicles. But there's initial stages where we can, like I said, continue to test and then see how we can kind of continue to translate that. I think the other piece is also focusing on sustainable aviation fuels and bringing that in development to the airports that we work, both with our clients, with our partners, with our airline partners as well. So that's where I think a lot of the innovation is coming, because the energy needs are so great. And the capacity is not there yet. So, and the last thing I was going to mention is on microgrids is something that we think it's a solution that can bring kind of resiliency, but also sustainable solutions to right now those energy demands. So.
What is a microgrid?
Yeah, so it's something that's been around for many decades. It's called distributed energy. So it's kind of similar to, you have multiple computers and you create, kind of more power. The same concept in energy and power. And it's not just it's very flexible, so you can actually complement what's already existing on the grid, but also be able to generate your own electricity. And it requires and it's flexible in terms of the inputs it can use from traditional kind of energy inputs, but also natural gas, which is very accessible now, or to more renewable or a mix of it. And so it's a very flexible kind of solution that brings and adds more capacity in a very much more limited space, but also resiliency. So when power is down, this kicks in, and you're no longer depending on just generators of diesel or other kind of non-renewable resources. And so that's the sustainability piece and innovation, and it's already taking hold. There's already some airports that are adopting it, and we're already forming a partnership with companies like Baker Hughes and AECOM to develop these microgrids at the airports. We'll be doing the O&M, so I'm very excited.
Sounds really interesting. And in terms of sustainability programs, do you run them as a across-the-board company like Avports, or do you have individual plans for each airport?
Right.
What's
So
your
I think
approach?
first of all was what we want to achieve, and so we're going through this process of defining what are the targets and the metrics, and we're working very hard to define those so that we can see, okay, how do we translate that across this diverse portfolio that we have, and also different contractual relations we have with some of our clients. So some places where we have much more direct kind of control of the operations versus dependency on a partnership, it requires different solutions, but I think that each one is something that in the next 6 months we'll already have a pretty good handle of how we want to measure what's the benchmarks or what we're trying to achieve in terms of those targets or KPIs. And then that way then you can think, okay, what are the gaps and where do you need to actually invest in terms of technology or CapEx or work with the existing partners to actually achieve those targets. So, yeah.
And so how are you working to diversify your revenue streams? So no, airports have traditionally been quite reliant on aeronautical revenue. So are you trying to kind of mix up the balance between the non-aero and aeronautical?
Yeah, I think that's what a private operator like us or investor brings, is that commercial kind of mentality, that we're not depending on our decisions are all purely commercial. And so a lot of things that already are happening around the world in Europe or even Latin America or Asia, where commercial development on the non-aero is something that we're trying to bring to the U.S. airports. And as you said, been more traditionally on certain kind of source of revenue, but actually diversifying that. And again, combining it with technology, innovation. And a lot of it is just the basics of making sure that those facilities are commercially viable. from the beginning of the development, but also through operations, and then putting in kind of whether it's food and beverage or retail or looking at property development or car parking solutions, but things that are adapted to specific airports. So it's not just across the board, but we're focusing on kind of helping both our existing clients and then also places where we have, for example, public-private partnership, like in the case of New Haven.
And what are you hoping to achieve by being here at the Roots Americas conference?
Right, no, that's a good question. This is kind of an interesting conference always every year that I look forward to. As a company, we're representing certain airports where we're trying to promote air service development and marketing. So it's an opportunity for us to re-engage and meet a lot of our existing partners and meet new airlines and present to them kind of where the underserved markets are and how kind of those airline partners identify those areas. And then show them, look, we're very proactive and engaged. On a personal level, just for me, I like it. It's because it gives me an idea of what the existing trends are in aviation. What are the airlines kind of thinking so that we can kind of anticipate where we should be as an airport operator and developer, and also meet those kind of specific demands and also be in tune. And then the last thing is, we're a relatively small industry where it's all about relationships, and that relationship kind of fosters new business opportunities as well. But also, what we've just been talking about, the innovation piece. So, yeah.
Absolutely. So are there any destinations or kind of areas that you're currently underserved to that are on your hit list to establish relationships with?
Yeah, so in terms of New Haven, as we talked about, we just signed a 43-year lease last year where we're committed to expanding the runway and the terminal. And it was one of the most underserved markets, Southern Connecticut, one of the most densely populated place in the world, in the U.S., and where people were driving 2.5 hours to the New York airports to catch a flight. So we're providing those. But because of the limited infrastructure that we have, we can only serve a certain amount of routes or demand. And so the idea is to expand and then start to also be able to serve the business segment that New Haven has, with Yale University and other New Haven University and University of Connecticut, and also other like this biotech that is happening, there, and contribute to being an economic catalyst that will create hopefully other industries as well and create more demand. So yeah.
It sounds very exciting. So I wish you all the best of luck, with this conference and speaking to people. But finally, how is your business outlook for the future? Are you feeling positive for this year?
Very positive. We actually, at Avports, we have more opportunities that we are able to execute on the immediate side. And we have two types of businesses, the O&M business, and then which has been our traditional business for the last 96 years, starting all the way going back from the Pan Am Airways days, and then now venturing since New Haven into the public-private partnership, which we feel, because the U.S. is undergoing what I call a low-cost carrier revolution that happened 25 years ago in Europe, it's happening in the U.S., right, where there's more demand and people are looking for more accessible kind of ways to fly, and so the regional airports is what's experiencing that growth, and the regional airports necessarily don't have the credit, but also don't have sometimes the expertise, and that they benefit from somebody like us to bring in that capital and form those partnerships and really take off, where it's a model that's been used and proven in other parts of the world, and bring that model to the U.S. So very bullish on that outlook, and because the demand's there, and we can provide those solutions. Yeah.
Okay, that was my final question. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.